And we're back with Cowboy Up with Tex. The sun is out. Looking like a nice day coming up. Still got a possibility of some rain in the forecast coming up, but right now it's nice out there. Yeah. That would be nice. Be out rounding up some of the cattle, bringing them in. Anyway, unfortunately, we're having to pay attention to what's going on in D.C. for everybody. Boy, that can sure take the wind out of your sails having to deal with them idiots in D.C. At least one thing good, though. The 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled yesterday in favor of the 26 states challenging President Barack Obama's executive action on immigration. So you remember originally Texas Judge Andrew Hannon back in February had put a hold on the immigration plan. And then Obama's minions were trying to quietly keep doing it. Well, he found out about it and kind of lowered the hammer on them a little bit and told them that they would not do it, or he was going to have to sanction, everybody involved. Well, it got appealed to the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a 3-judge panel. And 2 of the 3 judges ruled that the executive action, which would grant an estimated 4.7 million illegal immigrants. They're not undocumented. They're not international travelers. That's one of the new phrases that's been being bandied around, international travelers. No, they're illegal aliens that are in this country illegally, hence the name. Well, anyway, so like I said, the 2 of the 3 panel, 2 of the 3 judges ruled that the executive action should remain on hold while the government appeals its blocking. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said, "The president's attempt to bypass the will of the American people was successfully checked again today." And see, that's the important point right there, is that when you look at the overall number of people in this country that want immigration brought under control and illegal immigrants to not be receiving our money, it is a majority of Americans, a substantial majority of Americans. That's one of the reasons why the Republicans did so well in the last election. Was the Republicans, through Boehner and McConnell, both said real loud, "Oh, we're going to stop Obama. We're going to stop Obama." Well, they got reelected, and what happened? Well, we're going to wait and see what the judges do. They wussed out. Well, anyway, the case has become the focal point of Obama's efforts to change, let's say eliminate U.S. immigration policy. See, that's one of the things most people don't really think about is Obama and his crew do definitely believe in the one world government scenario, where they believe that there should be no borders. So what they're going to do is they want to eliminate the American border first and foremost. And then if it works for us, then they can go on and do it to the rest of the world. Well, the White House said that the 2 judges who ruled against the administration on Tuesday chose to misinterpret the facts and the law. In fact, the Justice Department is evaluating the ruling and considering their next steps, a U.S. official said. Well, right now, the 5th Circuit will revisit the rule again in the coming months on whether the Obama administration can even appeal the block to this executive order. That decision may be made by yet another panel of judges and will take into account even more evidence. Well, I mean, the evidence is fairly clear. You have the U.S. Constitution that says Congress is in charge of immigration policy, and you have the president who's trying to change immigration policy. What more evidence do you need? The president is acting unconstitutionally. It doesn't matter if it's by executive decree or, presidential memoranda or whatever he wants to do. He's not allowed to do that under the U.S. Constitution. If it is denied an appeal, the Obama administration is wanting to ask the Supreme Court to consider the case, but that would delay the launch of his immigration programs until at least June of 2016, which would be a pretty important political time period because it would be in the middle of the upcoming presidential race. You know, a number of the different magazines and news media and newspapers and CNN and all, they're like, oh, this is going to ruin Obama's legacy. Well, Obama's legacy has always been hope and change, to fundamentally, his words, to fundamentally change America. And this is not allowing him to fundamentally change America into something that is not America. See, that's the whole thing right there is you have America and you have not America. And that's what Obama and his minions want, is not America. I mean, on the Friday before Memorial Day, President Obama's administration tried to inconspicuously issue a regulatory agenda containing over 2,300 new regulations. Like, we don't have enough regulations on the book now. Already the number of regulations, which are not laws, laws have to be passed by Congress. So they instead do regulations and have unelected bureaucrats enforce their regulations. And they're trying to give us 2,300 more. And of course, is there anything in there that's any good for America? A good example of what was included is what could conceivably be the most expensive regulation ever in the history of the U.S. What it is the Environmental Protection Agency, who recently won a vote on who is the most despised department in the entire U.S. government. Not the IRS, the EPA. And this is the exact reason why they're, living up to that. The EPA wants a regulation implemented that would reduce the national ambient ozone standard from 75 parts per billion to either 65 or 70 parts per billion. I don't know why there's the difference there, but that's what the article says. So they're wanting to change it by 5, maybe 10 parts per billion, not million, billion. Well, the EPA claims that they think it would help reduce asthma attacks and asthma-related emergency room visits, premature deaths, and missed work days. So they're claiming they believe it would help. I wonder what type of study they did that allows them to claim that they believe it would help, because that sure sounds awful positive to me, doesn't it, you? I mean, really? To claim it believes it would help. Anyway, they say this regulation is necessary to clean up our air, improve access to crucial air quality information, and to protect those most at risk, our children. Isn't it always, we're doing it for the children? Every time a Democrat says it's for the children, check your wallet, folks, because that means they're fixing to be hitting it hard. Well, you know, and it all sounds good. Oh, yeah, we need to clean the air. We need to clean the air. You know, we need to do it for the children. There's just a couple of little minor problems with the whole thing, though. First off, the regulation could easily cost $140 billion per year. That's $140 billion out of our economy, which we know is growing great guns under Obama. Surely our fragile economy that's barely keeping its nose above water can afford another measly $140 billion. Plus, it would also eliminate possibly 1.4 million jobs, because the only way the companies are going to be able to come up with that type of money is to lay people off so they can divert the money towards the program. So here we already have stagnant job reports, the most people in the history of the United States being chronically unemployed, but that's okay. We can eliminate another 1.4 million jobs. I mean, all they'll do is they'll just import another 1.4 million illegal aliens that'll do it for cheaper. So we're down $140 billion, over a million jobs, for 5 parts per billion increase. And here's the fun part. Here's the fun fact. The regulation is so extreme that even national parks wouldn't actually be able to abide by it. I mean, we're not talking about, super highways with thousands of semi-trucks running up and down them every day, like we have here in Chattanooga, out there on 24 and 75, where they literally have thousands of semi-trucks every single day going through our town. No, we're talking about areas out in the middle of nowhere, like Death Valley National Park, Sequoia National Park, Cape Cod National Seashore. These different national parks have readings of 71 to 87 parts per billion. So does that mean they're going to be putting carbon scrubbers in the middle of the desert? Try to help out those desert tortoises and whatnot? I mean, think about it. The ozone standard that we have right now has already helped cut ozone forming emissions in half since 1980, so we're already making good progress. But no, we got to tweak it just a scoosh more, but at what cost? But see, that's the whole thing, is sometimes you have to wonder, do they do this stuff intentionally to hurt the economy? There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in this country right now, and you have to wonder what the overall objective of this presidency is. They want to fundamentally change this country. But the one thing they have never, ever answered is, change it how? Change it into what? They do these platitudes, but don't give specifics. Do they want to change us into a third world nation by out of control spending and regulations that totally disrupt our entire economy and put even more people out of work? Because that's what this will do. Yeah, talking about all the semi trucks and cars going through Hamilton County. I had to go down and renew my license plate today, which means, of course, you have to go through the emission testing center. Here's the fun part. I have a diesel pickup truck, but I still have to get tested even though I have a diesel pickup truck. So I'm asking the guy, okay, I understand, we've got thousands of cars on the freeway passing through. And, there's only about like 5 or 6 counties in all of Tennessee that have to do this. But the cars that are on the freeways, the ones that are actually causing all the problems, don't have to get tested. You and I are having to pay for all the vehicles on the freeway. And I asked him, why am I having to do it as a diesel truck? He's, well, everything motorized except pure electric vehicles, like a Chevy Leaf, have to get tested. Well, what it is why don't they just tack on an extra $10 to our license plates and be done with it instead of lying to us? Either that or put a big testing center right there at the 7524 intersection. Well, anyway, there again, this government seems to be going out of its way to bring our enemies, our potential enemies, right into our backyard. Now, most everybody's heard of Cape Canaveral, where we launch our spaceships from out on the East Coast. Well, just outside of Cape Canaveral is Port Canaveral. That's part of the reason why Cape Canaveral was chosen, was because they had that port there so they could bring things in for the Space Center. Well, Port Canaveral, which is also a naval station, and they have both U.S. and NATO ally nuclear submarines and warships going in there, as well as docking ships, just had a 35-year contract signed and set to go operational next month that allows a United Arab Emirates-based company to manage the facility, where they will be bringing their own people in to run the facility. So, wait a minute. So instead of hiring Americans, they're going to be bringing their own people in. And who's going to vet these people? Think about it. United Arab Emirates did have a role in providing the 9/11 terrorists with both a banking facilities and a country of transit. In other words, allowing them to go through it. They've had extensive connections with the radical religious clerics that rule Iran. In fact, bipartisan opposition in the Senate forced Dubai Ports World, name of the company, to back off the proposed deal merger back in 2006. Well, what changed? What changed during that time period? Well, it seems as though they made a few minor donations to the Clinton Foundation. They gave between $1 and $5 million to the Clintons. At which point, all of a sudden, Mrs. Clinton, who had been a leading voice against the deal, all of a sudden turned right around and has given her all to letting them do the deal. But they claim there's no bribery involved. The fact that she changed 180 degrees, the fact that her husband, who had been against it also, all of a sudden is all for it. It's amazing what those people will do for money. And it's also amazing how they won't stand up for the United States on principle. Because money be damned, we're doing it because it's what's right. Talk about people that won't cowboy up. Ugh. We'll be back in a few minutes with more Cowboy Up with Tex.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Right now, you can save half off at hotnewstalkradio.com. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com and click half off for exceptional deals on new and pre-owned unique quality items for Hamilton County residents only. Save half off at Jet's Pizza, golf clubs, coffee, tea, a real sword, jewelry, and much more. It's half off. Go to half off at hotnewstalkradio.com right now, then click on half off to save big. Be sure to join us live Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays at 11 a.m. as we bring you lots of fantastic deals right here, AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Hotnewstalkradio.com and half off.
Don't worry, just relax. You need a car? Come to Automax.
My wife and I keep the cost down. We sell a quality vehicle at a great price. Our overhead is low. I have no employees, so I can keep my costs down. In turn, the consumer gets a better price. Everything that I sell is emission ready. We really try to go the extra mile for our customer. I don't have to pay an employee commission. I don't have to pay somebody to come out here and wash my cars. You know, I do it all from buying to selling from A to Z. I don't have the overhead where I have to raise the price on my vehicle to cover costs. Here at Automax, you're going to guarantee that you get credit. As long as you're making those payments, you're going to build on your credit. Unlike the buy here, pay here is where they don't report to credit bureaus. We report to all three credit bureaus. The subprime lenders that we deal with, you don't have to have any credit, or you can have bad credit. You can even have a bankruptcy, a repossession.
Don't worry, just relax. You need a car? Come to Automax.
Surgery does not have to be financially painful. Hi, I'm Surgical Dr. David Red, and I'd like to invite you to my walk-in surgery clinic in North Shore. Quick Surge brings you immediate relief from moles, skin tags, maybe a laceration. Quick Surge. You walk in, fill out a mini form, I numb the area I'll treat, and before you know it, you're on your way home. Do I take insurance? No, because I take cash customers. I have super low and fixed prices, credit card, check, or cash. Uninsured? Member of the working financially disadvantaged? Choose Quick Surge. I publish prices online. No mirth, just sunshine. Hassle-free, pain-free. Love the idea of a personal relationship with a doctor? Drop in with a nasty cut from work. Quick Surge. I'll take care of you. Quick Surge in the Public Center on the North Shore. No insurance hassles with Quick Surge. The national medical system is dysfunctional, overpriced, very alienating. I'm part of the solution, and so are you. Come on home. QuickSurge.com. QUIKSURG. Relief.
When my brother and I opened our first Jet's Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300 plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
with the second half of Cowboy Up with Tex. You know, you can also get us on hotnewstalkradio.com. You can even get us on YouTube and Twitter. Just look up Hot News Talk Radio. Yeah, we're moving quickly into the 21st century. All sorts of different ways you can get us, listen to us, even watch us. And of course, if you go to hotnewstalkradio.com, you can see some of the other things here at the station, like our half off button, where you can see all sorts of deals for things that are half off. Boy, you can't get better than that. Yeah, of course, I listen to a lot of country western music. Boys enjoyed Charlie Daniels. Well, Charlie Daniels actually has an interesting website where he comments on things. And he recently commented on the cartoon drawing competition that happened in Garland, Texas, where the two terrorists were going to attack and ended up getting killed. And some of the things that he said I thought were actually pretty interesting. He said, I've heard widespread criticism of this group by those who say, well, they knew the event they were holding was likely to provoke an attack. Well, I do not commend nor condemn them, but I do feel that putting the focus on them and not on the danger of Islamic terror on the streets of America causes us to miss the point. Is America to walk on eggshells in practicing our constitutional rights from now on, observing strict rules of political correctness in a fruitless effort to placate the sensibilities of people who hack the heads off of Christians and kidnap children for sex slaves? No other group in the history of America has been granted immunity from criticism or even ridicule for that matter. And one has to look no further than the TV shows and arts exhibits to find mocking of God and belittling of those that follow him. Yet if followers of Christ went up and shot up Bill Mayer's show or bombed the exhibition of a photo of a crucifix in a jar of urine, I wonder if the critics would be so quick to condemn TV and museums for being the catalysts. The point being that these radicals don't have to be provoked by some special event or what they perceive as being an insult to their faith to kill innocent American citizens. People, let's face some cold, hard facts here. Radical Islam hates anybody who disagrees with them, and their ultimate goal is to destroy every human who breathes who will not convert to Islam. And it doesn't take a derogatory cartoon or a negative word about their faith to provoke them. After all, they live in a perpetual state of provocation. And it's not incident, but opportunity that sets them off, and the ever more solace they can get from the kill the messenger crowd and a president who can't even bring himself to call them radical Islamic terrorists, the bolder they will become. And if every federal agency, local law enforcement, intelligence agency, and every other entity charged with protecting America is not focused and fine-tuned to root out and destroy the terrorist networks in America, we are in for a mass bloodletting on the streets of our nation. ISIS claims to have sleeper cells in 15 states, a statement that may or may not be true. But for security purposes, we'd best take them at their word and dig deep and punish severely. A move that will be soundly denounced by the Muslim community, but one that, if they were sincere about being good Americans, they should welcome, to rid them of the monsters who give all Islam a bad name. After all, more Muslims die at the hands of these fanatics than of any other people. That was pretty good. But finally, he issued a direct message to President Obama, saying, America needs a leader who is a staunch defender of all our constitutional rights, a leader who will call our enemy by its proper name and hunt them down anywhere in the world when they are a threat to America, a leader with guts, gonads, and the nerve to tell America the whole truth. Well, sadly, Charlie Daniels is exactly right. Americans do need to prepare themselves for the eventuality that the radicals in our midst will rise up and launch attacks at the next opportunity to present itself. The enemy that is radical Islamic extremism is not only at the gates, it's inside the gates, and America simply cannot afford to ignore the threat any longer. And I agree with the vast majority of that, but I do have a couple of problems with a couple of things that he said. For instance, America needs a leader that will call our enemy by its proper name and hunt them down. Well, that's part of the reason why our leader, President Obama, doesn't call them by their name, because he's trying to intercede for them. He's trying to make them seem like they're not as bad as we know them to be. And then he brings them here by the thousands to our country. And think about where they're putting these people. They're bringing people from some of the most extreme areas of the Muslim world. They're not putting them like down in the Southwest area. I mean, think about where they come from over there in the Middle East. It's hot, usually kind of a high altitude, kind of mountainous areas. So where are they putting these people? Are they putting them in an area similar to where they came from? No. They're putting them in places like up in Dearborn, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. Areas that is totally, totally different from where they came from. And they get up there. They have no real help. They're being given money, our money, by the federal government. But overall, they're not receiving training. They're not receiving language lessons. They're just being dumped there where they can form their own communities, which become isolated, turn in on themselves, and become even more radicalized and even more extreme. And then they wonder why these people who've been brought over here and shown the kindness of America turn around and run off and want to join the extremists over in the Middle East and fight, or why they want to become extremists and do things here in America. After all, didn't we open our homes to them? Didn't we, welcome them in? Well, not really. Because if they'd been welcomed in, they would have been totally different than the situation they're in right now. But this is at the behest of the federal government. And when they're brought over here, it's the states that are being charged with taking care of them, coming out of state coffers, schooling for the kids, things of that nature. When most of the states, especially like Michigan, are already having severe problems, so that just puts a further strain on their finances. That's being done for a reason. But he is right about one thing. We do need to pay attention to what's going on, because they are charging up to do something, and we need to be aware of when they do. That's the problem, is a lot of these people in the federal government right now will tell you that they think that the United States is too big for their britches. They say, Y'all are on your high horse. Remember, Obama just said that. All of y'all are on your high horse. You need to get off your high horse. There was a magazine over in the Netherlands, and a reporter wrote in that magazine. He said, let me share my Dutch perspective on this matter. I thank God every day that the United States is the world's only superpower and that it behaves like an international policeman. Think about it. What is the alternative? If the United States withdraws, Russia and China will immediately expand their sphere of influence, and we do see that happening. These countries are ruled by authoritarian regimes who literally torture and kill critics, and who want to dominate other countries by the use of force. Just look what China's doing in Tibet, what Russia has done in the Crimea and in the countries of Georgia, and what it's trying to do in the eastern Ukraine. You want that to happen to the rest of the world? Just force the U.S. to withdraw within its borders, and China and Russia will take over in no time. That's a troubling enough thought, but it becomes downright scary if you think about the many radical Islamic forces that are now trying to turn Earth into one big battle zone. If you're concerned about what's going on in the Middle East now, just wait till the U.S. goes isolationists again. The current situation will look downright utopian in comparison. After all, historically, superpowers went to war to build empires. They'd conquer entire nations and then subjugate them to slavery. However, when the U.S. goes to war, it does so to protect foreign peoples. It doesn't occupy, it liberates. See World War II. Americans sent millions of soldiers overseas, some to Asia, many to Europe. When they beat the Nazis, they could have done what the Soviets did, which was occupy the newly liberated countries and make them part of a new empire. But instead, the United States withdrew most of its forces. The ones that were left behind were only there to protect Europeans against Stalin. Next, the U.S. gave European and Asian countries billions and billions of dollars in aid and helped them build up democratic institutions. Because of this, Europe is now, once again, one of the most prosperous regions on Earth. Sadly, America's magnanimity is the exception, not the rule. And that's precisely why not only Americans, but all non-Americans, too, should thank the Almighty every single day that the U.S. is the most powerful country on Earth and that it's not afraid to use that power. See, that's the thing is we're not supposed to be using that power. Well, of course, the Democrats have always been reluctant to use force, although ironically, every major war that we've had outside of the Civil War has been started by Democrats. But they claim they don't want to use the power, shrink us down till it costs us twice as much to rebuild up when we have to use our military because of the position they put us in, which is what's going on right now. China is in the middle of expanding its navy enormously. Russia is saber rattling like crazy. They're overflying different nations like Finland, Sweden, even here in the United States. They're moving in different countries like the Ukraine. We've got the Islamics in the Middle East and in North Africa who are going out and attacking and killing thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. So what does Obama do? He reduces the size of our military. And then, even at that, he fires Americans out of the military and wants to put illegal aliens in their place. Further weakening the U.S. military. There again, what exactly is he wanting to change us into? That's the one question I still have not been hearing. Seems as though they go out of their way to spend money where it doesn't need to be spent and not spend money where it should be spent. Sometimes it's kind of hard for some people to tell the difference between where it should be and where it shouldn't be spent. Good example of that is Amtrak. Like they say, Obamacare should be a big boon, but if you love the U.S. Postal Service, if you love Amtrak, you probably love Obamacare. They had that recent derailment up in the Northeast, which was terrible, but now everybody's fighting back and forth on how much money should be spent on it. Because on the one hand, the Republicans did authorize money to be spent. They had the money ready to be used, but it was the Democrats through the unions that delayed putting the electronics on the trains that could have prevented that crash. And then, of course, the way the Democrats do, they turn around and start running around and jumping up and down and yelling, well, you should have spent the money. The money was there. You just didn't spend it. But that's not the spend they want. But here's the thing. The incident has rekindled the debate over taxpayer-subsidized rail transport when we have a $17 trillion national debt. This is something that you have to really ask. Is this the best use for this money? Is this something that we need? And if it is something that we need, how come the public isn't doing it? The private sector. If it's such a good deal. I heard the saying one time that it's like giving a bunch of money to buggy whip makers. Well, we've got cars now. We don't need buggy whips. Well, maybe not, but we'd be putting all those buggy whip people out of business. Well, maybe they just need to be retrained into making something for cars. They drove the Golden Spike in Utah, connecting the East and the West railroads in 1865. And once that first railroad managed to cross the continent, railroads took off. Well, of course they took off. What did we have for an alternative? We had wagon trains. We had horses. We had boats that had to go all the way down around the tip of South Africa or South America. Trains were the thing in the 1800s. The first half of the 20th century showed the growth up to the golden age of passenger rail transport. Beautiful cars. People could even sleep on them. You had the Pullmans and whatnot. Hundreds of passenger trains traversed the American continent, putting millions of miles for passengers. Iconic routes with evocative names like the Hiawatha, the 20th Century Limited, the City of New Orleans. They made a song about that one. They had the Super Chief. But after World War II, cars were taking off. Roads were being built. Planes were becoming better and better for passengers. And as they did, the passenger lines started having a fall off. The zenith of passenger rails was 1945, when they had 98 billion passenger miles. By the year 2000, that number was down to less than 15 billion and declining. Operators began reducing routes, but the government regulators overruled efforts to eliminate unprofitable services. And by the 1960s, railroads were bleeding cash by being forced by the government to keep open certain routes. Well, finally, Penn Central, the last major passenger train, went out in 1970. So President Richard Nixon and Congress created the National Railroad Passenger Corporation, known as Amtrak. And Amtrak has never once in its 44-year history had a profitable year. Instead, it has cost taxpayers, that's you and me, over $45 billion in subsidies, the vast majority of which is in the East. You know, we were just talking about having a bullet train going between Atlanta and Chattanooga. Well, Mayor Burt just said that ain't going to happen because we didn't have the political will to do it. Well, now, first off, I find that kind of an interesting statement. We didn't have the political will because he's the mayor. If he got on his podium and really started pushing it, maybe he could have whipped up the political will. How come he wasn't up there calling on our representatives, Chuck Fleischman, Bob Corker, Lamar Alexander, who represent us supposedly in D.C., and say, we want this. Where are they at? Well, it didn't happen for us. In fact, it needs to be just done away with, period, on a whole national effort, because right now the government is subsidizing more than the passengers themselves are paying to ride. You throw enough money at something, you can keep anything alive. Program. But this is one program that has run its course and needs to go away. If it was profitable, somebody out there would be doing it. We still need the railroads for goods, but for people, I think it's time we moved into the 21st century. Because even our own local people are saying it's not going to happen. Plus, maybe it'd save us a little bit of money. Probably not. They'd figure out something else to spend it on. That's for sure. Well, thanks for listening to Cowboy Up with Tex. We will see y'all tomorrow for Weekend Roundup.